Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
There will be 2 interesting stories. Listen with pleasure.
The wife decided at her own risk to ask her husband the thing that started this. Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. Her name was Rebecca and Courtney, and I had a crush on her since the 7th grade. Even though I used to tell myself I would do anything to be with her, deep down I knew it would never happen. The simple truth is that Becky couldn't stand me. She tolerated me because of our mutual friends, but I never understood why she didn't like me. At first, I thought maybe she just didn't know me very well, so naturally, I tried to fix that. Every time I saw her, I would go up and say hi, but even though she acknowledged me, she would either turn away or just walk off. During 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grades, I must have asked her out at least 50 times, but she never bothered to give me any attention. In 12th grade, she started dating Frank Devon, so I couldn't ask her out anymore. I wasn't expecting to see Becky after graduation, so I was surprised to see her on her first day of college because I had heard she was going to some school out east. By then, I had already gotten over my feelings for her, so I didn't even bother saying hi when I saw her. Fate, or maybe the gods, must have loved to mock me because Becky was always around. It turned out we both decided to major in business management, so we had a lot of classes in common. Did I still have feelings for Rebecca Ann? Of course, yes. But I had learned from my past mistakes and tried my best to ignore her. It wasn't easy, and sometimes it was incredibly difficult. It seemed like every 4th class had a group project, and the instructors usually assigned groups alphabetically. Since Courtney and Connors were close in the alphabet, we often ended up in the same group. Luckily for me, when the group was deciding who would do what, I didn't have to work directly with Becky. I wasn't sure I could handle it. One thing I noticed was that whenever the group got together to work on projects, Becky always seemed to look at me when I looked at her. I had no idea what that meant. I got through my first year without making a fool of myself and was looking forward to summer break. Did I mention that fate and the gods love to mock me? My family owns a business, and I've worked there part-time since I was 13. Summer is our busiest season, and my dad always hires extra help for that period. A week after school ended, I had just arrived at work when Dad called me into his office. As soon as I walked in, I saw Rebecca and Courtney sitting there. Dad said, "Good news and bad news, Harry. The bad news is that Charlie had a family emergency and had to fly home to Maine. He expects to be gone for a month or 2. The good news is that instead of working for Charlie this summer, you'll be the temporary shipping and receiving manager. It shouldn't be a problem. You've worked here full-time for 2 of the last 3 years and part-time since you were 14. He nodded towards Becky and said, "I need to introduce you to Rebecca. I've hired her to take your place while you're playing manager." "I already know Miss Courtney," I said. He raised an eyebrow, not because I knew her, but because I called her Miss Courtney instead of Rebecca or Becky. He didn't say anything then, but I knew he'd want to know why before the end of the day. All he said was, "Take Rebecca and show her around. Make sure she knows where everything is, and then get to work." I spent the next 20 minutes showing Becky around the production facilities. I showed her where both women's restrooms were, where the lounge and snack machines were, and introduced her to Mara and Ashley from purchasing, Janice from accounting, and Alice from quality control. I took her to the receiving and shipping department and introduced her to Tom and Jerry, who also worked in that department. I explained what we were doing and what she would be doing. When I finished, I asked, "Do you have any questions?" She had one, and it amazed me. "Why don't you love me?" Her question caught me off guard, and it took me a few seconds to compose myself and answer. I remembered something one of my English teachers once said: "When something isn't clear, ask questions." Why do you think I don't love you? You know me, and you know I prefer to be called Becky. So what's with all this Miss Courtney nonsense? And when we're in general classes, you're cold and distant toward me. I chose the path of a coward. This is a personal matter, Miss Courtney, and it has no place at work. Maybe someday when we're not at work, we can discuss this, but for now, we need to focus on getting the order for Hamilton ready. UPS will be here around 1 o'clock. Her look told me she wasn't going to let this go. Luckily, there was a lot of work to do, and I handed her off to Jerry to show her the ropes. As Jerry led her away, I wondered what had just happened. This girl had ignored me for the better part of 6 years, and now she wanted to know why I didn't love her? It didn't make any sense. She had done her best to push me away all these years, and now she wanted to know why I was ignoring her. I pushed those thoughts aside and got back to work. Right after lunch, I had to stop by the purchasing department to talk to Ashley about when we could expect the packaging materials we needed. She said it should be delivered the next day and then asked how I managed to get my girlfriend a job. She's not my girlfriend, and I didn't even know she worked here until I came here this morning. She's not your girlfriend? Hell no, Ash, she doesn't even love me. Nonsense, Harry. If she's not your girlfriend, she wants to be. Come on, I knew it just from the way she looked at you. Harry, she wants to be your girlfriend. I laughed it off and went back to the receiving and shipping department. The next 2 days passed with minimal interaction between me and Becky. There's a diner not far from the business, and on the third day, while I was having lunch there, Becky came in, saw me, and came over to my table, sitting down across from me. We're not at work right now, Harold, and we're not on the clock. So, tell me, what's the matter with this Miss Courtney crap, and why don't you love me? Let me throw that back at you. Why do you expect me to love you, considering the way you've acted towards me since 7th grade? Why do you expect me to love you after you've responded rudely to my invitations to go out, more than once? You mentioned coldness and aloofness the other day, remember, Miss Courtney? Didn't you behave coldly and distantly towards me all your school years? Why, after you treated me like that from day one, did you expect me to be warm and friendly? I don't hate you, Miss Courtney, but because of past experiences, I am indifferent to you. I could tell from her face that she was not used to being talked to like that, and she didn't like it. But she asked, and I answered. She looked at me with a look that I couldn't decipher, then got up and left without saying a word. The rest of the week passed, and although we were often close, we rarely spoke to each other. I did most of the talking, telling her what needed to be done or explaining how to do it. On Saturday afternoon, I went to the country club where our family had memberships to swim in the pool. Becky's family were also members, and I had seen her there several times over the years. As luck would have it, she happened to be there that day. She was with 2 of her friends whom I knew from high school, and I have to admit that the sight of 3 girls in swimsuits made an impression on me. At one point, I saw them looking at me while Becky was saying something to them, and they were smiling and nodding in agreement. Naturally, I wondered what they were talking about. I would never have known if I hadn't asked, which I definitely didn't intend to do. The club cafeteria had a great half-pound beef burger, so I stopped and ordered it. I was sitting at the table waiting for my order when Sarah Wilcox and Carol Perry came in, saw me, and approached my table. They didn't ask, "Can I sit down?" They just pulled out chairs and sat down. These were the same girls I had seen when Becky was talking to them by the pool. Sarah began, "What's new, Harry? How are you doing? Long time no see." Carol added, and I immediately realized that something was wrong. I had known both of them since 3rd grade, and although we were always friendly with each other, they never just came up to me and said hi. Add to that the fact that they had been talking to Becky while looking at me and smiling, and it all screamed danger, Harry Connors, danger. I replied, "I was busy with classes, and now that it's summer, Dad makes me work full-time." "Are you and Pina still together?" "Haven't heard from her since she went east to study." "Busy this evening?" Sarah asked. "Nothing is planned." "Why?" "There's a party I want to go to, but I need a companion. If I go alone, I'll be pestered all night again." I heard the warning, "Danger, Harry, danger." I had never asked Sarah out. I invited her several times but was always turned down, and now she was inviting me? Yes, Harry, this is some kind of setup. I had no plans, and curiosity got the better of me, so I said, "I think I'd like that." Sarah smiled at Carol and said, "Whoever misses it is late." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Carol was going to invite you, but I beat her to it." That's when I realized with absolute certainty that this was a setup. It wasn't common knowledge, but I knew Carol played for another team, and there was no way she'd invite a guy. We agreed on a time for me to pick Sarah up, and the girls got up and left just as my burger arrived. As I sat and ate my lunch, I tried to figure out what was going on, but I couldn't think of anything. I picked Sarah up at 7, and she said the party was at Marlene Cantrell's. Marlene was another girl I knew from school. We had dated a few times, but it didn't work out. We remained friends but not close, and I hadn't seen her for almost a year. Marlene answered the door when we rang the bell, and although she smiled and said, "It's good to see you, Harry," I noticed she was rather surprised to see me with Sarah. She greeted us and led us through the house to the terrace. She pointed to the bowls of alcoholic and non-alcoholic punch, showed me where the keg of beer was, and then went to answer the doorbell. We weren't the first guests, and we took drinks. The terrace was large, and all the outdoor furniture had been moved out onto the grass so that the terrace could be used as a dance floor. Several couples were already dancing to music from a portable CD player. Sarah and I placed our drinks on one of the tables and joined in, spending the next 30 minutes dancing and mingling with other guests. We were dancing when I saw Becky leave the house with Marlene. Becky saw us, said something to Marlene, and walked straight towards Sarah and me. She tapped Sarah on the shoulder and asked, "Can I cut in?" Of course, Sarah answered and walked away. Becky took her place, smiled, and said, "Hello, Harry." I think I surprised her when I asked, "Why?" She frowned and said, "Why what? Why did you ask Sarah to bring me here?" The frown disappeared, and her face became serious. I didn't think we were so transparent. I needed to find a place where we could talk calmly, without any pressure, and I really doubted that if I asked you directly, you would agree. I thought that if we ran into each other in an informal setting, it would work. You've definitely piqued my curiosity, so let's sit down, and you can tell me. Let me grab something to drink first. We left the dance floor, and she led me to the alcoholic punch bowl, filled a red Solo cup, and then we went to sit on a couple of chairs on the grass. As soon as we sat down, she said, "After our conversation last week about why you don't love me, I started thinking about our past. I never considered how you might have perceived my behavior. The point is, you scared me." "I scared you? Why? In God's name, why did you think that?" "Just the way you looked at me, your constant presence. When I looked back, what I saw, I perceived as the behavior of a stalker." "A stalker?" "Let me finish. I don't think you ever knew my sister, Abby. She's 6 years older than me and graduated from high school before we started. She went to State University to study as an information technology specialist. There was a guy who kept asking her out on dates, but she didn't love him and constantly refused him. He was doing the same thing I thought you were doing, always looking at her, always there. In other words, he was stalking her. One night at a party, he tried to approach her without her consent, but some people heard her protest and saved her from him. Later, when she told our parents what had happened, she described what led up to the attack. That was on my mind when you showed up. If you'd let me, I could show you that I'm not like that. I couldn't, not back then. When you first asked me out, I had a huge crush on Danny Freeman and was trying to get his attention. If I had gone with someone else, he would have noticed and stayed away. So, the first few times I turned you down, it wasn't because I didn't like you. By the time I got over Danny, I already knew what had happened to Abby, and I saw in your behavior exactly what she had described as her stalker's behavior. Looking back, it was unfair to you. But in my defense, I was young and inexperienced. When I started dating Frank, you stopped doing all the things I perceived as stalking, and I realized I was wrong about you. I thought about approaching you and apologizing for my behavior, but by that time, you were already dating Pina, and I decided to leave it in the past. I was going to study in the East and didn't expect to see you again, but plans changed, and I stayed here. So, here we are. Well, I'm glad to know you don't think I'm some kind of crazy anymore. And in light of your confession, I may change my attitude and start calling you Becky instead of Miss Courtney, if you'll allow it. I need to find my date and make sure she's having a good time. I stood up and walked away, leaving her with a shocked expression on her face. I don't know what she expected after telling her story, but I doubt indifference was on the list. I found Sarah talking with Randy Combs and Rick Moore and approached them. Sarah looked at me with a "what are you doing here" expression, and Randy and Rick looked at me with a confused look. But I ignored them, offered Sarah my hand, and said, our dance was interrupted. "Let's finish it." Obviously, she didn't want to spend time with me. She had done her job and gotten me to Becky, so her job was done, right? I was supposed to be Becky's problem now, right? But I was still her date, and she couldn't tell me to leave without making a scene. And she didn't dare do that at Marlene's party, or she'd end up on her blacklist. So, she smiled at me and said, "Let's go." "Who was supposed to take you home tonight?" I asked while we danced. I could see she was about to lie, but then her face changed, and she said, "Randy." "Well, I don't want to ruin your evening, so when we finish this dance, I'll leave." "Why do you want to leave?" "The plan was for you to stay with Becky." 6 years of coldness, aloofness, and neglect should disappear after a 10-minute conversation? Maybe we'll get along better at work, and maybe after school starts, but that's all that's going to happen. The music stopped, and I thanked her for the dance and began to lead her back to Randy, who was talking to Rick and Chuck Burns. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm taking you back to Randy and leaving." She grabbed my hand and stopped me, saying, "Oh no, you're not leaving. The rule is, you dance with the one who brought you, and you leave with the one who brought you. You're stuck with me until you take me home." Is this coming from a girl who has already arranged for Randy to take her home? Rules always have exceptions. She pulled me back to the dance floor, and as I held her in my arms while we danced, she asked, "Why have we never met, Harry?" "Only you can answer that, Sarah. I invited you many times, but you always refused." I probably had a good reason back then, although I can't remember it now. I need to think about it and try to recall. My problem right now is that I think I'd like to make amends, but I know Becky is trying really hard to win you over, and she's my friend. I don't want to lose her by interfering with her wishes. "I just can't understand why she wants me," I said. From 7th grade until graduation, she made it clear that she wasn't interested in me. I just don't see that suddenly changing 180 degrees. All I know is that she pushed me to bring you here and said that if everything went the way she wanted, she would leave with you. And her interest in me piqued your curiosity, and now you're interested? "Guilty on all counts," Sarah said with a laugh. I smiled and replied, "Don't worry, dear. Good old Harry loves the attention." While we were dancing, I saw Becky watching us and couldn't figure out what she was thinking. After a while, I noticed she came onto the dance floor with Bill Croft, but every time I glanced in her direction, she was still looking at me. As midnight approached and the party started to wind down, I took Sarah's hand and went to find Marlene to say goodbye. When we got in the car, I asked Sarah if she wanted to stop somewhere for coffee or something to eat, and she said yes, so I drove to the Village on 6th Street. Over coffee and pie, I asked her, "Will our evening together harm your relationship with Randy?" She shook her head. "No. We meet sometimes, but there's nothing between us. We just support each other when we need a companion for an event." "And how will this affect your relationship with Becky?" "It shouldn't. I don't see why it would. You were my date, and she can't be angry at me because you didn't follow her plan. That's today, but what about you going out with me after tonight? Am I going to be doing this?" "I don't know," she said thoughtfully. "But I'm asking, do you want to go to the VFW dance with me on Friday?" She was silent for a few seconds, clearly considering the consequences of her answer, and then she said yes. On Sunday, after church, I did some chores around the house and yard, running errands for my mother. Around 4 o'clock, I was pulling weeds from the flower beds when my mother shouted that I had a call. It was Sarah. "I have to cancel our date on Friday," she said. "Just talk to Becky." She wasn't too upset that last night didn't go according to her plan, but she freaked out when I told her about Friday. I don't want to lose one of my best friends over something that probably won't go anywhere. "I understand, dear. Maybe another time." After hanging up the phone, I couldn't help but think about Becky and her actions. Why, after years of neglect, was she suddenly so insistent? I could accept the explanations about her past behavior that she gave at Marlene's party, but why the aggressive behavior now? It didn't make sense to me. Throughout the rest of the day, thoughts of Becky and her behavior kept popping into my head, swirling around for a bit, then disappearing, only to return again. She was a girl who was used to guys being attracted to her, and I wasn't one of them. So, Did she see me as a challenge? Did she suddenly realize how charming and irresistible I am? Yes, of course. As if. Monday morning, I was sitting at my desk in the shipping department when Becky walked in. I looked at her and smiled, saying, "Good morning, Becky. How was your weekend?" Since it was a complete 180 degrees from how things had been before, it surprised her, but she quickly recovered. It was normal. Not how I wanted it to be, but normal. There was a lot of work that day, and although Becky and I were often near each other, our conversations were strictly business. Tuesday and Wednesday went pretty much the same way. But that all changed an hour after lunchtime on Thursday. It was a slow day. I was sitting at my desk going through some documents, and Becky was at a side table entering data into the computer. Suddenly, she turned to me and asked, "Are you doing anything tomorrow evening?" This caught me off guard, and I looked at her with what must have been a devilish expression on my face and replied, "Excuse me?" "What are you doing tomorrow evening?" she repeated. "I don't know." "Why?" "I want to go to the VFW dance, and I need a date. Since it looks like you're never going to ask me out, I'm asking you." This didn't just surprise me, I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, considering how she had been acting over the past week or so. I sat there with my mouth open, trying to process it. It's not such a difficult question, Harry. You have two one-word answers to choose from, yes or no. Finally, I shook off the shock. I don't think that would be a good idea, considering our working relationship and everything. Oh, Harry. In a little over a month, we'll be leaving here and going back to school. I'm just a summer assistant, Harry. So, what about it? Yes or no? I'd always liked Becky, right? I admit that by the time I got to college, I had accepted that she was unattainable. But here she was, taking the first step. While I sat there, a small war raged in my mind. On one side, a voice said, "It's too good to be true, Harry, so it probably isn't." Another voice said, "Do it, Harry. It's what you've always wanted." The first voice replied, "This will end badly, Harry." The second voice said, "She's a lovely young lady, Harry, and she obviously wants to get to know you better. Come on, what do you have to lose?" Some other guy might have been able to look back on all those years of angst and say, "Hell no." I couldn't. "Yes," I said. "What?" Becky asked. "Yes, I'd like to invite you to the VFW dance on Friday." When I picked Becky up that Friday, I was reminded why I'd been obsessed with her since the 7th grade. She looked absolutely stunning in her little black dress and heels. As I helped her into the truck, I caught a great view of her legs. As I walked around to my side and got in, Becky, already in control of the moment, said, "Still trying to figure out why?" "It's crossed my mind a couple of times," I admitted. "It's actually quite simple," she said. "I want to know what I missed by being such a jerk to you back in school." "The truth is," I said, "you didn't miss much. At that time, I was so in awe of you that I couldn't think straight. I probably would have done something so incredibly stupid you'd laugh and humiliate me. That would have hurt more than indifference." "Were you excited about me?" "Past tense?" she asked. "Does that mean I've lost a step or two over the years?" "The fact that you managed to get us both into this truck should answer that question," I said with a grin. We had a great time at the dance. There were a few people we knew there, including Sarah and Randy, and we pushed some tables together. Becky and I seemed to click and danced well together. During a slow number, she leaned in close and rested her head on my shoulder, and I cursed the gods for not allowing this to happen sooner. I danced a few times with Sarah and a couple of other girls I knew. During a waltz, Sarah said, "Looks like I missed my chance." I laughed. "You had a lot of chances, girl, but every time I asked you out, you turned me down." "Yeah, because every time you asked me, I was dating someone else. You should have kept asking. Sooner or later, you'd have caught me when I was single." "Crap. If only I had known," I said with a grin. "It's not too late," she said. "If things don't work out with Becky, you can always call me." "Yeah, and by then, you'll tell me, 'Sorry, but I'm dating someone now.'" "If that happens," Sarah teased, "I'd rather dump him than miss my chance with you." I thought, asterisk, what the hell is going on with these girls all of a sudden? Am I suddenly the flavor of the month? Asterisk. I know what you're thinking, Harry, Sarah said. You couldn't. Do you want to bet? I joked. You're wondering why girls are suddenly asking you out or making it clear they're interested in you, right? Yeah, I admitted. A couple of reasons, she said. First, the girls are talking. Polly gave you very high marks, so now that she's gone, the others want to see what she thought was so great. The second is simple human nature. When someone else wants something, it makes you want it too. The song ended, and Sarah pulled me toward our table before I could respond. Her words lingered in my mind half an hour later while I was dancing with Nancy Wilder. Are you seeing anyone now that Pina's gone? Nancy asked. I've dated a few people, but no one in particular, I replied. I get it. Ever since Rory went full-time at Florida State, I've been stuck too, she said, giving me a clear invitation to call her. I began to wonder if Sarah was right about the sudden interest from all these girls. On my way back from the bathroom, Rita Dutchman stopped me. How are you, Harry? I haven't seen you in a while. I mostly work and go to school, I said. Same here, she replied. Rumor has it you haven't dated anyone since Polly. You've got my number, call me. With that, she hurried into the restroom. I watched her go and thought about what Sarah had said. Gail had been my first, and for a while, I thought things were going well until she told me she was going on a date with Eddie Catron. I was young and naive. I dated 3 or 4 other girls after that, with no success, until I met Helen Geneva. We dated until she gave me the same excuse that Gail had. Then came Pina, but by the time I met her, I knew that just because you were intimate, it didn't mean you were together forever. I knew Pina and I wouldn't last long because she was going back east for college and only planned to come home for summer and holidays. Then something happened that made me wonder if I was really as clueless as I thought. I had just returned to my seat after walking Nancy to hers. I took a sip of my iced tea, and Becky leaned in and said, Am I going to have to fight to get you out of here with me tonight? Not sure what she meant, I just looked at her, probably with a confused expression. It's obvious to me that almost every girl you danced with tonight wants you. I half expected Karen to drag you off the dance floor, and Bev looks at you like a cat ready to pounce on a mouse. Even that backstabbing Sarah is giving off I want to take him home vibes. So, do I have to fight for you tonight? I swear, I had no idea where this came from, and I still can't believe I said it, but when she asked that question, I looked at her and said, anything worth having is worth fighting for. A strange expression crossed her face, and then she said, That's it, boy. We're getting out of here. She grabbed her purse and stood up. I was caught off guard and reacted slowly, but I stood up, and she took my hand in a way that felt possessive, leading me toward the exit. As soon as we got into the car, she kissed me. I'm not easily accessible, she said. I'm a girl who goes after what she wants, and right now, that's you. Find us a bed. I might have been a little dazed by the sudden turn of events, but dazed or not, there was no force on God's green earth that could stop me from doing what the girl I'd had a crush on since the 7th grade asked. It took me only 9 minutes to get to the BA Way Motel on Kofax and 4 minutes to check into a room. As soon as we entered, Becky looked me straight in the eyes and said, Undressing time. Time for the truth, boy. I know you're dying to understand my sudden change in attitude, so I'll tell it like it is. You have what I want, or at least, I hope you do. I've already explained the situation back in school, but what I didn't tell you is that I've been watching you since your initial orientation. Because of the way you acted in school, I thought that sooner or later, you'd make a move towards me, so I waited. Patiently. I waited, but you ignored me. Once I realized you weren't going to make a move, I decided I'd have to do it myself. She paused, then continued, I had a problem. I've never had to chase after a guy before, so I wasn't sure how to do it without looking easy. What I was doing wasn't working, so I decided to be bolder. That led us to the VFW dance today. At the dance, I saw how the other girls were looking at you, and I realized if I wanted to get what I wanted, I'd have to take the bull by the horns and go for it. By then, she was completely without anything except for her stockings and heels. She took my breath away. The fact is, I was so stunned by what was happening that I just stood there, watching her undress and talk. She shook her head, maybe in frustration. She walked up to me and reached for the buttons on my shirt. The sight of her approaching must have triggered something in my head that snapped me out of my daze. I grabbed her wrist just as her hands reached my buttons. "Why?" I asked. "Why what, Harry?" she replied, confused. "Why all this?" "The hotel room, undressing. You didn't have to do that. After today's date, I would have asked you out again, and I know you know that. So why this over-the-top step?" She sighed. "I told you already, Harry. The simple truth is that, unless Pina was lying, you have what I want. And after what I saw on the dance floor tonight, it's obvious the other girls want it too. I decided it was best to pin you down before someone else does. So, here we are." "I don't get the connection with Pina," I said. "What could she have told you that made you interested in me?" "At one of our pajama parties, Pina told us about your skills," Becky said with a sly grin. "So, I'm just a plaything for the night? And tomorrow, you'll ignore me again? Be serious, Harry. If Pina didn't lie, do you really think I'd let you leave? Though, it may not be your choice, you could be bad in bed, and I do have standards, you know." Her face took on an angry expression. "Bad in bed? I'll show you something, you an idiot." And she did. We made love, and afterward, she said, "Not bad, Harry. I think you'll do." I was about to respond with something sarcastic, but I paused and thought about her words. "I think you'll do." Did that mean she was planning to stick around? If so, I better keep quiet. I woke up first the next morning, sitting up in bed, leaning against the headboard, watching her and wondering what would happen next. When she woke up, she rubbed her eyes, looked at me, and said, "It's not that bad." "What?" I asked, confused. "The look on your face," she said. "Whatever you're thinking, it can't be that bad." "How do you know what I'm thinking?" "It's written all over your face." She smiled. "I'll make this easier for you. No, you don't have to worry about taking me home right away. Knowing my mom as I do, she's probably not home yet. She's probably just waking up in a hotel room like this one." I raised an eyebrow, and she noticed. "Later," she said. "Next item on the agenda, no, we don't need to look for wedding rings today. No, we won't be telling our moms to start planning a wedding. This is all it is. And no, we won't even come close to that yet. Now, are we going to do this before the shower, in the shower, or after the shower? I vote for all three options." She laughed, and so did I. We checked out, threw the key on the table, and headed to Denny's for breakfast. After we ordered, Becky said, "I noticed you raised an eyebrow when I mentioned my mom and where she's probably at. My dad died 6 years ago, and my mom is a beautiful, healthy woman. She grieved for about a year and then started looking for someone to fill that void. She always says she hasn't met anyone who comes close to my dad. I told her she won't, because Dad was one of a kind, and she'll have to settle for second best. She's still looking, but healthy women have needs." Becky smirked. "She doesn't want to set a bad example for me, so she doesn't bring them home. She still thinks I don't know what's going on. She pretends I believe her when she says she had too much to drink and stayed over at Lily's, Megan's, or Bev's. Now that we've cleared that up, we can move on to the next point." "And what's that?" I asked. "Did you enjoy last night?" she asked with a teasing smile. "Definitely," I replied. "Do you want more?" Same answer. "So much so that you'd give up all the others?" I frowned when I heard this, but before I could say anything, she continued, "I'm not talking about wedding vows. I'm just asking, can you be exclusive? I don't understand what you're getting at." "No, you understand. You just haven't realized it yet. I believe in being straight with people, so here's how it is. I went into last night, the motel part, thinking that if Pina wasn't lying, I'd keep you for myself. But if she was lying, it would have only been one night. I'm glad to say that not only was Pina telling the truth, but she didn't even do you justice. You're better than she described." She paused, then added, I took that step last night because I saw how the other girls looked at you. It was obvious, at least to me, that several of them were going to try to win you over. And I don't share. So the question is, can you be exclusive with me, or will you be like a kid in a candy store, wanting to try everything? She looked at me expectantly. I assume, of course, that based on your actions in the past, you want me, she added. This possibility hadn't occurred to me when we entered the room last evening. I thought Becky just wanted to satisfy her curiosity, and it would be a one-time thing. Not going to lie, yes, I'd love to be like a kid in a candy store, but the other girls Becky mentioned, and a few she didn't, weren't etched into my memory since 7th grade. They were attractive, sure, and some were even cute, but they weren't Becky. If Becky was offering exclusivity, then I'd be exclusive. I just smiled at her and said, I can be faithful. And I was. Over the next month, the girls Becky mentioned, along with a few others, did try to win me over, but I wasn't interested. Why would I be? Remember when I said that Pina was my gold standard? Well, Becky was the platinum standard. No, I didn't expect things to go wrong. Becky did that. We returned to school a little over 3 months ago and still had plenty of activities together. One morning, on a Wednesday, we were walking from our 10 a.m. classes to the student cafeteria when I asked her what she wanted to do on Saturday evening. I'm going to the Tim McGraw concert. Damn, girl. Could you give me a little more warning? I'm not sure I'll be able to get tickets at the last minute. Greg already bought them, she replied. Greg? Yes, I'm going with Greg. Greg was a guy who had transferred from another university and was in several of our business classes. Let me clarify, I said. You're going on a date with Greg Moreison this Friday? That's right. By then, we had reached the dining room, and Becky turned to go in, but I kept walking. I heard her call, "Wait, Harry." I turned to see her hurrying to catch up with me. No, thank you, I thought and kept walking. We both had an introduction to business class that afternoon, but luckily, we had assigned seats, so I didn't have to sit next to her. She was sitting near the front, only 2 seats away from Greg, I noticed. I was in the back, so I got up and left before she could catch me after class. We didn't have any other activities together that day, but I couldn't avoid her forever. We both still worked part-time at the business. Other than missing work, I'd be where she could find me. The good news was that Charlie, our supervisor, came back, and I convinced him to assign us to different departments. It didn't stop Becky from trying to get to me, but it slowed her down and gave me time to cool off, at least a little. I managed to avoid her until 10 minutes before the end of my shift. What's wrong with you, Harry? She asked. Why are you acting like this? You're a college student, Miss Courtney, so you can't be that stupid. What did you expect when you told me you were going on a date with another guy? It doesn't mean anything, Harry. He had tickets to the concert and asked if I wanted to go with him. You know how much I love Tim McGraw. Then, Miss Courtney, you should have asked me to get tickets for the concert when you found out it was going to be held here. But you didn't do that, did you? Remember our first evening together, the evening when you started talking about fidelity and insisted on exclusivity? I didn't realize that only applied to me. My mistake. Shame on me for being so naive. In a way, it's good that I've now learned our relationship is so weak it can't handle you dating a guy just because he has concert tickets. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to celebrate the fact that my shift is over and go find a date for Friday night. I left her and went home, where I told my mom what had happened and asked her not to put Becky through if she called. Then, I walked out onto the patio, sat at my desk, and started drafting the paper that was due next week. Mom called me for dinner, and after eating, I decided to do what I told Becky I was going to do, find a date for Friday night. Then I smiled because I had an evil thought, if I can pull this off, who better to date than one of the girls Becky had tried to outdo the night we first met? My first choice would normally have been Sarah, but even though she said I could call if things didn't work out with Becky, she was still Becky's best friend. Even though I was angry, I didn't want to ruin their friendship. So, I decided to call Nancy Wilder first and was a little surprised when she agreed to the date without hesitation. Only after she said yes did she ask, "What about Becky?" I told her, Becky decided to date other guys and expects me to be cool with it. That's not going to happen. We made plans for Friday, and I went back to working on my essay. I managed to avoid Becky at school, but I couldn't avoid her at work. Considering that she was the one who ruined our relationship, I didn't understand her sarcastic attitude when she saw me. It started as soon as she walked in and saw me. "Mr. Macho, got a date for Friday?" she asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. I decided that if she wanted to be sarcastic, I could be too. "None of your business, Miss Courtney," I replied. She grinned and said, "I thought so. Call me when you get tired of playing." I walked away from her and tried to avoid her for the rest of my shift. The next day, I was sitting in the cafeteria, drinking coffee and going over my notes from class when Becky walked in. She spotted me, walked over, and sat down. I gathered my things and stood up just as she sat. "Where are you going, Harry?" she asked. I ignored her and left. I had an agreement with my dad that I would always have Fridays and every other Saturday off. That meant I wouldn't see Becky again until Monday. That evening, I picked Nancy up at 7 o'clock and we went to Outback Steakhouse for dinner. Afterward, we headed to the VFW for the Friday night dance. We had a good time, though a few people raised their eyebrows when they noticed I wasn't with Becky. We left around 11 o'clock and stopped at the Village Inn for cake and coffee. We'd been there for about 15 minutes when Becky and her date entered. They were laughing and smiling until Becky spotted us. Her face showed clear surprise when she realized I actually had a date and that it was with one of the girls she'd worried about me getting close to. Our eyes met briefly, then I turned my attention back to Nancy. Becky and her companion, I couldn't even bring myself to say his name, sat across the room. I couldn't see them because my back was to them, but apparently, they could see us. Nancy leaned in and whispered, "Becky hasn't taken her eyes off us since she sat down." "Are you sure it's all over between you two?" she asked. "Think about it, Nance," I replied. "Is she sitting here with me, or with another guy? It's over. I just didn't want to be the one to ruin your relationship." "Don't worry," I said. "I didn't call you until after she told me she wanted to date other guys." "Can we leave?" Nancy asked. I don't feel comfortable with her sitting there watching us. We left the restaurant, and once we were in the car, I asked her what she wanted to do next. She surprised me by saying, "I was hoping you'd want to take me to a motel." My surprise must have shown on my face because Nancy quickly added, "Let's be honest, Harry. You don't have any real feelings for me beyond sympathy. Strong sympathy, but still just sympathy. We have no future beyond a few dates, right?" I nodded. "I had a wonderful romance with Rory," she continued. "We made love 3 or 4 times a week until he left for Florida. I haven't had a night since then, and I can't wait anymore." "I don't understand, Nance," I said. "You're a beautiful girl. You should have a line of guys wanting to date you." "They're there," she sighed, "but all they want is intim. And while my body wants that, I don't want my life to become a series of one-night stands." "So, what makes me different?" "You're a good guy, Harry. You're not a 5th place, and Penis said you're the kind of guy who won't let a girl down. But according to you, I'm still just a one-time thing. No real feelings, just sympathy, right?" "There are 2 kinds of one-night stands," she explained. "The first is I came, I saw, I conquered, and the next day, you tell Tom, Dick, and George, 'Hey, guess what? I slept with Nancy last night.' The second kind is when the guy wakes up, smiles, says thank you, and leaves without telling anyone. Pina said you're the second type, someone a girl wouldn't mind having a casual relationship with." "Is that all?" I asked. "I'm just a nice guy." She turned away and said quietly, "She also said you like to do something special." That triggered a memory from my relationship with Pina. We dated on and off from 8th to 10th grade. Early in our senior year, when we were both 18, Pina invited me over to her place while her parents were out of town. That weekend changed everything for me. It didn't start well, mostly because of my inexperience, but by the end, Pina had taught me a lot, and I rocked her world. I'd never forget that weekend. That experience, in some ways, had led me to Becky. And now, it was leading me to Nancy. I smiled at Nancy. Nancy enjoyed it as much as Pina and Becky had, but we didn't spend the entire night together. I had to take her home, so it wasn't a full night of passion with waking up together in the morning. Still, we agreed to meet again the next day. Our second date was at the Super 8 Hotel on Barclay, and the third, on Sunday, was at her house while her parents were out for the day. When I got home on Sunday evening, I looked back at the weekend and decided that I liked how it had gone, not just the intimate, but the idea of night without commitment. Nancy and I could just be casual partners as long as she was willing, with no hard feelings when it ended, since we both knew from the beginning that it was simply a friends with benefits situation. We agreed that while we were seeing each other, neither of us would have other partners. I managed to avoid Becky at school on Monday, but I knew I couldn't avoid her at work. To my surprise, she was friendly and didn't try to start a conversation. It sounds odd, but I felt both happy and upset about it. I was glad because I didn't want any drama, but I was also upset that she didn't try to restore the relationship. I mean, what the hell? She was the one who ruined everything, so shouldn't she at least try to ask for forgiveness? Becky was friendly again on Tuesday, and it wasn't until Wednesday that she brought up the situation. I was getting a Coke from the machine in the break room when she walked in. I grabbed my drink and sat at a table. Becky got a bottle of water and sat across from me. "I heard you and Nancy Wilder have been spending a lot of time together," she said. I had spent time with Nancy on both Monday and Tuesday, so I just nodded. "Was I so easily replaced?" she asked. "As I recall," I replied, "you freed me from our so-called committed relationship, so that freed me up to see others. Nancy just happened to say yes when I started calling. She likes me and is a fun date, so yeah, I keep asking her out." "Damn it, Harry, why can't you understand that my going to the concert with Greg didn't mean anything? Maybe not to you, but it meant a lot to me. It meant I couldn't trust you." "That's just stupid, Harry." "No, it's not, Beck. You can't honestly believe that." "Of course, I can. What's gotten into you?" "I don't know how it happened, but I can guess what probably went down," I said. "You heard about McGraw's concert and mentioned how much you loved his music. Greg heard that, saw an opportunity, and bought tickets. He let you know he had them and hinted that he needed someone to go with. You couldn't get tickets yourself since they sold out fast, so your only option was Greg. Oh, for God's sake, Harry, it was just a date." "Stop it, Beck. It wasn't just a date. Greg knew you were my girlfriend, everyone knew it. We walked into class together every day, holding hands. Greg knew that, and he still went after you. And you agreed. I don't care what Harry thinks, right? As long as you gotta go to the Tim McGraw concert. Did you sleep with Greg?" I asked, knowing I'd never truly know the answer. Your denial means nothing to me because I know what you're capable of when you want something. I looked at my watch and said, "I need to get back to work." Then I stood up and left her sitting there. After that conversation, Becky started avoiding me, and I was relieved the drama was over. Nancy and I lasted another 2 months before she ended it. She met someone she thought could be a long-term partner. I wished her luck, and life went on. My schedule was busy with essays and research projects, so I stayed away from dating for a while. Becky and I were both studying business management, so we still had the same classes. We were friendly, but we didn't talk much, just a nod when we saw each other. When I finally started dating again, I sometimes saw her with other guys. She was never with Greg, though. She couldn't say the same about me. I was always with the same girl whenever she saw me. Yes, it was another one of those girls Becky had tried to outdo when we first met. However, this time it was different. Marge wasn't one of those girls who just wanted to know what I was like in bed. In fact, she was a bit wary when I first asked her out. It happened at a VFW dance. I had gone alone, not looking for anything, just wanting to dance and have fun. After about an hour, I saw Marge come in and take a table. She checked her watch frequently, glanced at the door, then back at her watch again. I approached her and asked, "Would you like someone to talk to and dance with until whoever you're waiting for arrives?" Marge smiled and said, "That would be nice." I sat down and asked, "Will you mind?" "It's not a he," she said. "Anna was supposed to meet me here." "What happened to Anna?" I asked. "Mike Chelsea happened," she replied. I decided not to dig deeper and simply asked her to dance. Anna never showed up, so Marge and I spent the evening dancing and talking. By the end of the night, I asked her out on a date. I don't know, Harry, she hesitated. I just got rid of a jerk, and I'm not looking to date someone else right away. Does that mean I'm a jerk? I asked. I don't know, Harry. Are you? You dated Becky, and she dumped you. Then you dated Nancy, and she dumped you too. So, what's wrong with you, Harry? She continued. I'm not stupid. I know why both of them went after you. They wanted to find out if what Pina said about you was true. Apparently, it was, because they stayed with you for a while. But in the end, they both left. So, the question I'm asking myself is, why? I looked at her for a few seconds before saying, I could tell you, Marge, but you probably wouldn't believe me. Because I'm a jerk, right? If you really want to know, ask Becky and Nancy. Thanks for the dance, Marge, I said. See you around. Then I got up and left. The next day was my work Saturday. Dad decided I had learned all I could about shipping and receiving, so he moved me to accounting. This meant I no longer worked alongside Becky. At lunchtime, I went to the break room for a Coca-Cola and a bag of chips. I was sitting there, sipping my drink and munching on some chips, when Becky walked in. She came and sat down, something she hadn't done for weeks. I got a call last night, she said. It was weird. I continued to eat my chips and drink my Coca-Cola. Marge Collins called me and asked why I left you. Why did she do this? You'll have to ask her. I didn't leave you, Harry. You acted stupid and pushed me away. I didn't want this, Harry, so tell it to Marge. I got up from the table and went back to work. It was 2 weeks before I saw Marge again. It was at a VFW dance, but this time I was the one sitting alone at a table. I would have preferred to sit at the bar, but all the chairs were taken when I arrived. Marge came in, saw me, and walked toward me. Can I join you? Are you sure you want to be seen with a jerk? She sat down and said, this is not the mindset if our relationship is going to go anywhere. Are we going to have a relationship? That's what dating is for, to see if there's anything to build on. As far as I remember, you asked me out on a date. I didn't say no, Harry. I asked some questions, and you told me where to find the answers, so I did. I got the answers, and now the only question is, where are we going to have our first date? What about tomorrow? Dinner and a movie? I like it. Let's go dance. We spent the evening drinking, dancing, and talking. I found out she had been calling Becky, which I already knew, and she was also in touch with Nancy. Nancy told me about our agreement and said she was sorry she let me go. Looks like her new man is no match for you, Marge commented. She didn't tell me what Becky said at first, and there was no way I was going to ask. Apparently, Marge realized that I wanted to know but wasn't going to ask, so she told me. At first, Becky was mad at me because I said I was going out with Marge. She hoped that after my affair with Nancy, I would return to her. Then Marge told me what happened and how sorry Becky was. I just shrugged and said it was her choice. Let's go dance. My date with Marge went as planned, and we had a great time. I got a nice kiss when I took her home, along with a date for Tuesday. That date led to several more, and at the end of the 5th date, when I walked her to the door, she said, "Are you going to make the first move, or should I do all the work?" I remembered a previous conversation about not wanting to be one of those guys. Oh, for God's sake, Harry, we've already dealt with this nonsense. Now I think it's time for us to go to bed. She opened the door and led me inside. It was a long and tiring night. Luckily, it was one of my free Saturdays, so I didn't have to get up and go to work. Marge made us breakfast, and over bacon and eggs, she asked, "What are we going to do for the rest of the day?" "Whatever you want. Don't think you can do it all day and then be fine in the evening. I thought you loved me, but now I find out that I'm just your toy." "Yes, and you like it," I replied. "You're probably right." The weekend was fun. Marge and I made it through the end of the school year, but then she went to Arizona for family reasons and never came back. I never heard from her again. I worked full-time over the summer, and of course, so did Becky. We were friendly to each other, but neither of us tried to deepen our relationship beyond exchanging a good morning when arriving at work and a have a nice day when leaving. Then one Wednesday, I was sitting in the break room drinking coffee and eating a donut when Becky came in and sat down at the table with me. "Harry, I need a big favor." "What happened?" "I need a gentleman for Friday and Saturday." "Why me?" "Because my family loves you." "I don't understand." "It's my cousin Carol's wedding. The rehearsal dinner is on Friday, and the wedding is on Saturday. My family doesn't like the guy I'm dating now. I was directly told that I shouldn't come if he's my date. I can't miss Carol's wedding, Harry. I just can't. But it seems like they don't want to see me if I'm with someone they don't like. I know that they love you because when we were together, they told me more than once not to let you go. I'm desperate, Harry. Help me, please." I had no other plans for the weekend, and it would really be more of a public appearance than a date. So, why not? I told her I would do it. She laid out the logistics. We'd drive to her uncle's house in Fairmont early Friday morning to relax by the pool before dinner. After the wedding, we would go to the reception, which would end by 10 o'clock, and then we could either go home that night or stay and leave on Sunday morning. I expected Becky to use the car ride to convince me that we should get back together, but she surprised me. All she talked about were things related to school and work. She told me that Dad was going to move her from shipping and receiving to purchasing, but I already knew that. She liked her dad and her work ethic. He asked me if I thought she would want to work full-time after graduation. I told him I thought she might agree, and he said he was going to move her around to different departments so she could learn more about the business. She didn't tell me that my uncle had a mansion. When we arrived, I was introduced to her Uncle Aaron, who called me Ron, and Aunt Rabbit, who called me Tubby, along with Carol, who was to be the bride. Tubby told Becky that she had put us up in the West Wing bedrooms and invited us to unpack and join the group by the pool. Becky led me to the East Wing, pointed to the room that would be mine, told me to put on my swim trunks, and promised to show me the way to the pool. I unpacked, hung up what needed hanging, put on my swim trunks, and went out into the hallway, where I found Becky waiting for me. She was wearing what some might call a swimsuit, but it had no more material than a man's handkerchief. She, of course, knew the effect her swimsuit would have and stood there grinning. I said, "Lead." When we arrived at the pool, I realized there were two pools. One was an Olympic-sized swimming pool for distance swimming, and the other was a kidney-shaped pool for recreational use. I also learned that Becky was not the exception, she was the rule. There were about a dozen of Carol's friends there, and all the girls were wearing swimsuits that were practically non-existent. There were a few older women in bikinis, but they were a little more modest. One of the older women was the most striking I have ever seen, nearly 6 feet tall, raven hair flowing down to her waist, green eyes, and a body to kill for. She had a classic hourglass figure. Becky saw me looking at the woman, read my expression, and said, "No, you wouldn't." "No, I wouldn't take her to your cave and keep her busy." She took my hand and dragged me toward the woman. "Aunt Abby, this is Harry." "Harry, this goddess is my Aunt Abby." Aunt Abby looked at me and said, "If you lose him, give him my number. He looks delicious." Becky laughed and said, "Aunt Abby is a family man who eats men. Don't let her get you, she'll turn you into a worn-out husk in less than a month and then dump you on a pile of her other worn-out conquests." Aunt Abby laughed and said, "I'm not that bad." "Yeah," says the woman who killed 4 husbands. Aunt Abby laughed again and said, "Don't make me mad, little girl, or I'll take him away from you just out of spite. How about it, Harry? Can she take you from me?" I stood there looking at Aunt Abby, and Becky said again, "Can she take you from me, Harry?" After a couple of seconds of silence on my part, I finally nodded, and they both laughed. Becky said, "I better get you away from her." As we left, I looked back at Aunt Abby, and she winked at me. I already knew that Becky's mom was a knockout, and it must have been a family trait. I swear there wasn't a single woman in Becky's family who scored below a 10 on a scale of 10. The only people I wasn't introduced to were the guys at the pool. I met them when I jumped into the water. One came up to me and said, "I take it you belong to Becky." I nodded in agreement, and he extended his hand. Tom Halder. I'll be with Carol soon unless I can somehow get my hands on Aunt Abby. I laughed and said, good luck with that. I took his hand. Harry Belmont. He told Becky to behave or she would lose me. All I could do was hold back the urge to scream, do it. Do it! He laughed and then introduced me to the other guys in the pool. We had a nice time, and I even ran a few laps before Becky told me it was time to get dressed for dinner. Becky was gorgeous, and I have to admit I didn't look too shabby myself in my gray pinstripe suit and maroon tie. The rehearsal went off without a hitch, and at the subsequent dinner at the country club, Becky and I sat with two of her married cousins and their spouses. The conversation at dinner revolved around them trying to find out more about me and my relationship with Becky. I didn't tell them there was no relationship and that I was just on a date. Becky, on the other hand, was leading everyone to believe that the next big wedding might be ours. Luckily, before things got too far, the band started playing and people began dancing. I danced with Becky's mom, Aunt Tubby, and even her 70-year-old grandmother. Becky thought it was a riot when I said, when we get married, I will have to keep you in a chastity belt while you are around my family. I was having too much of a good time to ruin it by reminding Becky that I'd only be with her on the weekend. The highlight of the evening, at least for me, was when Aunt Abby walked up to our table, took my hand, and said, "It's my turn," then led me to the dance floor. "I just wish I could get to know you better," I said. There was a short pause. Or do I have a chance? What, you may be deceiving everyone here, but not me. I don't know what the game is, but Abby can't be fooled. It's obvious, at least to me, that Becky is in love with you. It's just as obvious to me that you don't like her that much. Am I right? I nodded. Yes. Well, tell me. I'm just her date for the occasion. She didn't want to come alone, so I agreed to go with her. This is something more. It must be. She doesn't hide her feelings. They are visible to everyone. The music stopped, and the band leader said they were going to take a break. I wanted to take her back to the table, but she grabbed my hand and said, "No, follow me." She led me out onto the terrace into one of the stone benches that lined it. We sat down, and she said, "Tell me." I wanted all the real details. I had already mentioned how impressive she was, and sitting next to her, I wanted to do what every man who saw her wanted to do. She knew it and used it to get what she wanted, and it worked. I was under a spell. I opened up and let it all out. She listened and then laughed. Poor boy. Do you think girls want you just because you're good in bed? Has it ever occurred to you that once they're with you, they might want to stay? That they've discovered you're more than just an intim? How many of them ever stayed? They all abandoned me, so I must have had nothing special except night. This is all complete nonsense, Harry, and you know it. You knew where you were with Nancy in advance. As for Marge, you don't know why you never heard from her. She could have been in an accident and is in a coma in some hospital for all you know. And Becky didn't leave you, you kicked her to the curb. Why couldn't you accept what she said as the truth and then move on? Let's see if this ever happens again. I can tell by my niece's behavior that she really wants to be yours. Why not try it, Harry? What do you have to lose? We both sat in silence for a few moments, and then she asked, "Are you really that good in bed, Harry?" Some girls think that way. So I will make a deal with you. You give my niece one more chance, and if it doesn't work, I'll let you have a night with me. This is a can't-lose situation for you, Harry. She stood up and said, "The music is playing again, let's dance." I swear every eye in the place was on the door when we walked in. Everyone wondered what Harry and the ogre Aunt Abby were doing. We danced to 3 songs, and then I walked her back to her table, and then back to mine. Luckily, Becky was on the dance floor with her groom, so I didn't have to answer her questions, at least not before she stayed on the dance floor for another dance, this time with the best man. I was watching them when Becky's mom pulled me off my seat and onto the dance floor. She said, "What were you and my sister doing on the terrace?" I tried to be nice and said, "She wanted my body, but I fought her off." Don't put this on me, young man. First, we both know that if Abby wanted you, she would have gotten you. Second, Abby would never poach a male family member. And third, And by no means least, Rebecca is Abby's favorite niece, not to mention she's also Rebecca's godmother, and she will die before she does anything to harm Rebecca. She just wanted to know what kind of attention I have for Becky. That's all. You were there that long just answering a question? Something in my head clicked, and I instantly went from enjoying dancing with a pretty woman to being annoyed by a bunch of bossy women who were attacking me. If you need to know what happened, ask his sister. The music stopped, and I led her back to the table. She grabbed my hand and tried to hold me. I'm not done talking to you yet. This is what they call conflict, Mrs. Courtney. You want to talk, but I don't. I pulled away, left her on the dance floor, and returned to my table. Becky was there when I arrived, her expression one of disbelief. You just walked away from my mother and left her standing on the dance floor? Yes. How could you do this? How could you be so rude? It was easy. I just got tired of the women in your family sticking their noses where they don't belong. Is this what happened with Aunt Abby? See? And you too. Everyone should know about me and Aunt Abby. This is no one's business but Aunt Abby's and mine. Enough about this. Let's dance. I don't think so. You just managed to ruin the mood. Oh no! Don't blame it on me. It was your irritated behavior when I sat down that brought us here. Instead of attacking me, you should have waited until you talked to your mother and learned from her what went down. I stood up, and Becky asked where I was going. You don't want to dance, and I don't want to just sit here and drink, so I'm going back to my room. And I left, leaving her sitting there. When I returned to Uncle Aaron's room, I considered just taking my things and heading home. But then I decided to become a responsible adult for the sake of change. I brought Becky, so I needed to take her home. Not that she couldn't handle it without any problems, but what was right was right. I was lying in bed and almost asleep when there was a knock on my door. I stood up, walked over to it, and reached for the doorknob when I heard, "Open up, Harry." It's Abby. I opened the door, and Becky walked past me into the room. She turned and closed the door. I wasn't sure you'd open it for me, but somehow I knew you'd open it for Aunt Abby. You can be such a sometimes, but you are mine, and you need to get over it, Harry. You are mine, and I will have you whether you like it or not. And I have no say in this matter. No, don't. I have decided that I will be the mother of your children and your bedmate until death do us part. Fine. I admit I got stupid when Greg waved Tim McGraw tickets at me, but still, what were you thinking back then? All he got from me was a goodnight kiss on the cheek. I never dated him again, though he asked me at least a dozen times. Then I realized the fact that you will probably leave if I don't gather the strength to follow you. I remember someone once told me, if it's worth having, it's worth fighting for. So here we are, and I'm not letting you go. You can say, don't think like that and push me away, but I will always be there. If you're on a date and I see you, I'll be your shadow, Harry. I will always be there. I have a weapon that I can use. I think your dad likes me. I will be a great daughter-in-law and give him wonderful grandchildren. I'll ask him to make sure that we always work together and that I'm always close enough to work on you. Don't resist, Harry. I always get what I want, and I want you. 3 months after graduation, we got married. Over the next 5 years, she actually gave my parents 3 beautiful grandchildren. Looking back at my life since I said, I do, I realize how happy I am that Becky decided that everything worth having is worth fighting for and that she achieved what she wanted. I had a good relationship with Becky's family, especially with the female members. Every dance or social event I attended with them, including dances, was enjoyable. I already mentioned that on my scale of 1 to 10, they were all 11 or better, right? Aunt Abby was especially merciless during one of the dances. At that time, Aunt Abby, already on her 6th husband, said, I don't think I'll ever have to experience what you're like in bed, do I? I could also press buttons, smiled at her, and said, I don't know about that, you are Becky's favorite aunt. If you ask her, she might let you borrow me. She stopped midway, took a step back, looked at me, and then burst into loud laughter. I stood there with a grin on my face as everyone in the room watched the spectacle. I don't think anyone ever made Aunt Abby lose her temper like that in public, and I could tell by the looks on the faces of the other ladies that I was going to have to tell the story later. I walked Aunt Abby back to her table and then had to go to the men's room. When I returned to my table, I saw Becky and Aunt Abby talking and smiling at each other. I sat down, and Becky turned to me and said, "Aunt Abby and I were just talking. You know she's my favorite aunt, right? Anyway, she has a request." I looked at Abby and saw this devilish grin on her face, and I thought, oh my gosh, Harry, what have you just done? They both read my expression and laughed. What do you think of our story today? In my opinion, the wife shouldn't have even considered going to the concert with anyone.
There will be a part now, right? Which one is better?
After 6 years of marriage, Ellie and I were on the verge of realizing our dreams. We had been saving diligently since the beginning of our marriage, and now we finally had enough money for the down payment on a house. Soon we plan to start a family. My name is David Wallace, and I work as a cybersecurity consultant, a job that allows me to work remotely without needing to visit the office. If someone were to ask me about my marriage to Ellie, I would describe us as deeply in love and utterly devoted to one another. We shared all our secrets, maintained a fulfilling, intimate relationship, and enjoyed a connection so strong it felt inseparable. Thanks to our profound love, stable financial situation, and shared desire to have children, I was confident, putting my life on the line, that our future together was bright and promising. We often observed the struggles and breakups of other couples, but we always felt that our love and marriage were stronger and more stable. This belief had taken root in our souls, convincing us that nothing could ever come between us. I was certain of that. Meanwhile, Ellie was excelling in her role as a regional manager at a national technology company that was experiencing a period of significant growth. However, the situation changed when a new vice president joined the company from the Manhattan office. Richard Jones, a self-assured young graduate, exuded an air of superiority and relished asserting his dominance over subordinates. His presence began to cast doubt on my convictions. Since his arrival 3 months ago, my wife's behavior had started to change. She became distant, irritable, and unpleasant to communicate with. Although she attributed her behavior to work-related stress, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. I did my best to be a supportive husband, staying patient, surprising her with flowers, arranging dates at her favorite spots, and listening attentively to her concerns. One evening, she shared her frustrations about her new boss, Richard. She described him as difficult and unsettling for the staff. I suggested she quit, but she explained that she had already applied for a transfer to another department. We needed her income for our new home, and she felt it wasn't the right time to leave her job. Ellie reassured me that the transfer was likely due to her familiarity with the company's software and the positive reputation she had with the corporate office. Her current position required her to visit other branches 3 times a month. She believed that after a few more trips, the transfer would be finalized. However, after 6 weeks and 3 trips, the transfer had not materialized, leading to increased stress at home. As a result, she began to treat me more like a roommate than a husband. When I expressed my concerns, she assured me that everything would improve. She noted that Richard had started treating employees better, perhaps because the corporate office noticed the decline in morale and advised him to change his behavior. Despite this, Ellie remained hopeful about the transfer. Although she made efforts to be more polite at home, her behavior towards me remained cold. She was reluctant to engage in intimacy more than twice a week, and even when we were together, it felt more like a gesture of obligation than the passionate bond we once shared. One Friday evening, she came home and announced that she would be traveling to the corporate office in California for 2 nights with her supervisor, Richard Jones. She explained that the purpose of the trip was to finalize details about her transfer. At the time, I didn't realize that her tension was caused by the pressure Richard had been exerting on her to have an affair with him. Ellie, a stunning 28-year-old woman, stood 57 tall, with a slender figure, ample curves, and a face that could rival that of an angel. For the first few months after Richard joined, I didn't suspect anything unusual. However, as Richard's advances towards her became more blatant, I began to notice subtle changes in her behavior. Later, I discovered that Ellie had confronted Richard, wounding his ego and subjecting her to significant stress at work. It was obvious that Richard's actions amounted to physical harassment. I couldn't understand why Ellie didn't trust me enough to report it to the HR department. Since Richard's initial tactics didn't work, he switched to a more subtle approach: flirting, teasing, complimenting, and promising Ellie a bright future at the company. After numerous dinners and countless conversations about her marriage and intimate life, he managed to convince her to consider, at least once, being with him and to reflect on the potential consequences this could have for her future. The mounting pressure she faced, combined with a sense of impending betrayal, gave rise to a sinister alter ego. In an attempt to rationalize her one-time act of infidelity and ease her guilt, she shifted the blame onto me, portraying me as the villain in this situation. We hadn't been intimate for 2 weeks, and she ignored my advances. Without begging for physical intimacy, I expressed my concern about the state of our relationship. She assured me that everything would be fine soon and asked me to give her time to resolve her work issues. Despite my love for her, I longed for the passion we once shared. Not knowing what to do next, I realized that it was necessary to change the dynamics of our relationship. I informed her that I would be waiting for her to return from her trip in the hope of saving our marriage. As the 7th anniversary of our marriage approached, I made several attempts to repair our relationship and rekindle her love before she left. However, all my efforts were in vain. On the day she was supposed to leave, I came home early to surprise her with a box of her favorite chocolates as a sign of love and a desire to make peace, hoping to convey how much I cherished her and wanted our lives to return to normal. I knew she had taken the day off to pack her things and board the plane at 3 p.m., arriving home around noon. I smiled, eager to surprise her and express my love. When I entered the house, I called her name, but I was met with silence. The house seemed empty. In the bedroom, I noticed her suitcase on the bed and an elegant dress hanging on a hanger. She knew how to dress elegantly, radiating confidence in her style. I had always admired the way she carried herself. Left alone in our bedroom, I dialed her mobile number to find out where she was. Her responses were brief, and her greeting was curt. I felt insulted and unwelcome. What do you need?" She replied irritably. "Nice greeting," I said, trying to gauge her mood. "I just want to know how your day is going and what you're doing. I'm going to have lunch with my sister. You know I'm leaving for the airport at 3 o'clock. Do you need anything else?" Surprised by her tone, I simply wished her a safe journey and ended the conversation without expressing the usual affection or farewell. I wondered if she even noticed the absence of my usual warmth. Feeling a mixture of resentment and anger, I sat on the bed next to her packed suitcase, trying to make sense of the situation. Her words and behavior towards me crossed the line, and my frustration grew. As I sat there, my face buried in my phone, I decided I wasn't going to wait for her to come home. I began to leave the house, but a purple object in her open suitcase caught my attention. Curiosity got the better of me. Reaching in, I found a plastic bag containing a sheer, purple nightgown, matching thong panties, and a bra, as well as a pair of nylon stockings and a garter belt, all untouched. This unexpected discovery was shocking, as I had never snooped through my wife's belongings before. Realizing that she hadn't worn such lingerie for me in the last 2 years, it dawned on me that she must have packed it for someone else. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly fell into place. Upon examining the suitcase further, I found an unopened box of contraceptives in the side pocket. Everything became clear: her distant and unloving behavior towards me, the lack of intimacy, and how our relationship had changed since she started traveling out of town with her boss 3 months ago. I suddenly realized I held proof of an affair in my hands. These items she had packed for her trip were clearly intended for another man, most likely Richard. In that moment, I decided I no longer wanted to participate in her insidious game or be her cuckold. Blushing with anger, I went to my office, grabbed a piece of paper, and wrote a short note with trembling hands. "Ellie, I hope he appreciates your gorgeous underwear. It's clear why you've changed in recent months. Obviously, you don't need my presence anymore. Rest assured, by the time you get home, I'll be gone, never to cross paths with you again. If I had known you would turn out to be unfaithful, I would never have agreed to marry you. But as they say, live and learn. Forever, the plus in this situation is that you'll never have the honor of becoming the mother of my children. I'm grateful we postponed starting a family. Perhaps Richard will help you with that. Sincerely, David. Taking a stapler from the drawer, I carefully attached the note to the luxurious, fragile fabric of the lingerie. Then, I carefully put everything back in the suitcase, ensuring there was no trace of my presence. Wanting to calm my nerves and upset stomach, I went to the nearest restaurant to enjoy a private dinner on the day she planned to betray me. Ellie sought solace in confiding in her sister Jenny over lunch. She needed to speak out, and she knew that Jenny would treat her with understanding, giving her a sense of comfort at a time when she was feeling guilty and afraid. I felt overwhelmed with stress, and I needed to get it out before I reached the point of breaking down. As soon as we placed the order, I decided to open up and tell her everything that was bothering me. It was a relief to finally bring everything to the surface, but I couldn't ignore the disappointment in Jenny's eyes as she looked at me with disbelief. "Why are you risking your marriage for this jerk?" Jenny asked. "You've already said that he's a jerk and has been stalking you for months. Why don't you think about resigning or filing a harassment report?" In an intimate setting, I tried to explain, "Jenny, I've gotten to know him better over the last month. He's going through a hard divorce. He was in a bad mood and took it out on us, but lately he's become very kind. He asked me to stay with him at least once, and I don't know why, but I agreed. We'll do it just once on this trip, and he promised we'd never talk about it again. He's also going to help me get a promotion at the company." Jenny's expression grew sharper. "So you're going to betray David, the person you've loved since college? Is he really worth risking your marriage for a possible promotion? Do you realize he's manipulating you and turning you into someone you're not?" "No, it's not like that," I protested. "I just feel sorry for Richard. I know he needs it. Besides, David will never know, and everything will fall into place when I get back." Before Jenny could respond, my phone buzzed. "Sorry, David is calling me." "Let me answer it." "Hi, what's wrong, David?" "I'm having lunch with my sister. You know I have to leave for the airport at 3 o'clock. Do you need anything else?" I asked, quickly putting the phone back in my purse after his reply. When I looked up, I couldn't help but notice Jenny's expression of disgust. Turning to her, I asked angrily, "What happened?" "Ellie, did you really just talk to your husband like that?" Jenny exclaimed. "That was the rudest thing I've ever seen you do. What's gotten into you?" Embarrassed, I replied, "What do you mean, Jenny?" Jenny shook her head. "Do you understand how you just treated him? Are you out of your mind?" You answered and immediately asked, "What do you need?" "Can you imagine how my husband would react if I talked to him like that?" And then you abruptly ended the conversation with, "Do you need anything else?" "No. Goodbye." "No, I love you." "No, I'll miss you." How do you think he took it? Shame washed over me. My God, I just realized how sharply I spoke to him. I can't believe I actually said that. "Ellie," Jenny continued, "I think this affair you're considering is clouding your judgment and putting your marriage in jeopardy. You said that David expressed concern about your relationship and felt neglected. It seems like you're subconsciously sabotaging your marriage and mistreating your husband to cope with guilt." "You're absolutely right," I admitted. "I was unfair to poor David, taking out my displeasure on him. I need to fix everything and apologize to him. Do you want me to leave you alone?" Jenny offered. "No, please stay. I need to make a phone call." I tried calling David, but he didn't pick up. "Oh no, he's not answering. Maybe he's busy. He usually always answers my calls. I'll try again." But even after trying once more, there was no response. "Ellie, can you send him a message from me?" Jenny suggested gently. "Oh no, he must be upset right now. I can't blame him, and I have to leave in less than 2 hours. You should apologize and pull yourself together," Jenny urged. "I don't think continuing your plans with Richard is a wise decision. You should end it before it causes irreparable harm. You and David have a good relationship, and you've been planning to start a family. Think about it." "I understand you, Jenny," I said hesitantly, "but I'm not sure I can stop it at the moment. It's just one time, and I believe that my family and work life will get better afterward. Richard is going through a difficult divorce and feels very depressed. He promised it would only happen once and that it would be good for him because I remind him of his wife." Jenny's voice was sharp with disbelief. "Ellie, you do realize that he's manipulating you, right? You can't be that naive." "No, you're wrong." I defended him. "He's a good guy at heart. His wife is trying to take his children away and ruin him with alimony. When he confided in me, I felt his suffering and a strong connection between us. I think I should do it at least once after all the time we've spent together. Have you discussed your marriage or David's feelings with him? Looking at my hands, I hesitated before saying softly, I may have mentioned David's complaints about the lack of intimacy. Ellie, you're stupid, and you have to hope that David doesn't find out you shared the details of your relationship with another man. I'm afraid you've crossed the line, Ellie. If David finds out about this, it will be a disaster for your marriage. Can't you see the chaos you're creating and what you're risking? I understand your point of view and agree with you. Therefore, it will only happen once. Now I realize how badly I treated David. When I return from this trip, I will fix everything with him. He will never know, and it will never happen again. I'm going to bury this secret deep inside me and never talk about it again. It will be a forgotten memory. Your denial is really disturbing. Are you planning to have an affair with another man? Thinking it won't have any long-term effect on you? I assure you, it will change you and your views on your husband. There will be no positive result from this. Please think again. Jenny, I appreciate your concern, but I'm an adult now, and I can handle this. It's just a physical act and a one-time occurrence. David will never know, and as they say, there is a positive side to this. I hope you understand the seriousness of your actions, but I urge you to think about my words. Making this decision will be a serious mistake that cannot be corrected. You will forever remain in history as an unfaithful wife, and I hope you will be able to bear this burden. Rest assured, I will figure out the situation. In 2 weeks, you'll see a happy David when we focus on starting a family. I am deeply saddened by this turn of events and do not see anything good in it. As your sister, I ask you to change your mind. Cancel the trip, quit your job, and apologize to David for your recent actions. David is also my friend, and if he finds out that I was aware of the situation, he may break off friendly relations with me. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Jenny. Your concern means a lot to me. I will carefully consider your advice, but I still consider it necessary to make this trip. Before I leave this afternoon, I will talk to David and express my regret for my behavior. David's emotions during lunch were unusual and disturbing. Sitting at a table in a nearby restaurant, I couldn't help but think about the last few months and how my once happy marriage had collapsed. I had to discreetly wipe away my tears to hide my vulnerability. At first, I was overcome with anger, but soon my emotions turned to sadness and bitterness when I faced the reality of my ruined relationship. The love I once cherished and the life my wife and I had built now seemed like distant echoes of the past. As I reflected on my circumstances, a wave of humiliation and betrayal swept over me, replacing my initial emotions. I couldn't understand how she could betray me and our marriage like that. What did I do to encourage her to cheat? Forgiving her was out of the question. I couldn't imagine being with a woman who wanted another man. My pride just wouldn't let me. I assumed that my friends would urge me to forgive her and move on, but I didn't want to go down that path. My anger flared up again as soon as the phone rang and Ellie's number appeared on the screen. I decided not to answer her calls anymore. The time for talking has passed, my dear. Your kind and loving husband is no more. You've set the beast free. Ellie flew off with Richard, who had bought first-class tickets for their cross-country flight, trying to win her over. But when they were on the plane, Richard noticed how upset Ellie was. She realized her husband was ignoring her calls and messages. When Richard realized Ellie had second thoughts about everything that was happening, he quickly shifted his demeanor, taking on a supportive and understanding role to ease her concerns. Handing her a drink, he gently encouraged her to relax, assuring her, Ellie, it's all right. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for this. He might be busy at a meeting or unable to speak at the moment, but he will definitely call you back. Nothing serious has happened. Everything is fine. As they discussed their plans, Richard suggested, once we return from these meetings, I want you to take a few days off to restore your relationship with your husband. You deserve that time. He added wistfully, I'd give anything to have a loving wife like you. It's hard for me because my situation is so complicated. My future ex-wife won't even let me talk to my daughters. It hurts a lot. Ellie noticed the sadness in his eyes when he spoke about his daughters and couldn't help but feel compassion for him. As they ate, she set aside her own concerns, reached out to take his hand, and offered comfort. At that moment, Richard saw an opportunity to use her kindness to his advantage. He intended to manipulate her emotions further before ultimately encouraging her to return to her husband. To Richard, it was all part of a calculated plan, a game. He found satisfaction in creating guilt and self-reflection in women, ensuring they would view their relationships with renewed commitment while he remained detached. He even relished encounters with the husbands of these women at business events or casual meetings, reveling in the power he felt during those moments. This behavior had become intoxicating for him, feeding his need for control and dominance over the vulnerable women he targeted. Arriving at the hotel, Richard and Ellie walked hand in hand to the reception desk, where Ellie noticed something unusual. There was only one room reserved for them. As they left the counter, she turned to him, confused. "Don't I have a separate room?" she asked. "Ellie," Richard replied smoothly, "we discussed this. On this trip, you and I will share a room. Let's not overthink it. Let's just enjoy this unique experience as we agreed." "I thought you said this was a one-time thing," she hesitated. "Don't worry, Ellie. Everything will be fine. It's one trip, not a lifetime. Just for now, let's pretend we're a couple on an adventure. I promise to treat you like royalty. This will be our little secret." When they entered the room and Ellie saw the double bed, she was overcome with guilt at the thought of sharing such intimacy with someone other than her husband. Yet, as the thrill of the moment took hold, her guilt began to ebb. Feeling conflicted and overwhelmed, she stepped out onto the balcony, hoping for clarity. Richard, noticing her unease, discreetly put their bags away before joining her. Together, they admired the tranquil view of the Pacific Ocean. "Isn't it beautiful here?" he remarked, knowing how much Ellie loved ocean landscapes. With tears glistening in her eyes, she nodded. "Yes, it's breathtaking." Richard gently turned her face toward him, his touch tender and reassuring. Looking into her eyes, he leaned in for a soft kiss. At first, Ellie responded, but soon she pulled away with a conflicted smile. Richard saw her hesitation, but decided to bide his time. He believed that within hours, they would become closer, and he would achieve his goal. He knew he was betraying her trust and exploiting her vulnerabilities, yet he felt a perverse satisfaction as he returned her smile. "It's going to be a wonderful evening, Ellie. We have dinner in a few hours, so take your time to freshen up. I'm going to the gym for a quick workout, and we'll be back in time to get ready," he informed her. She just nodded in response, silently watching Richard pack up his gym clothes and leave the room. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she felt a strong urge to talk to David, to make sure everything was okay. Realizing how badly she had treated him, she wanted to apologize and take care of his well-being. Her love for him was obvious, and she was looking forward to the end of the trip so they could return to their harmonious lives. With a sinking heart, she dialed his mobile phone number, hoping he would answer and assure her of his love. But her hopes were not fulfilled. He did not answer. Realizing he was upset after their previous conversation, she decided to contact him via text message in hopes of resolving the situation. "David, my love, I deeply apologize for my behavior on the phone today. I had a rough morning, and unfortunately, I took it out on you. Please forgive me, and I promise to make amends as soon as I get home. I miss you terribly, and I want you to know that I love you. I'm looking forward to this weekend to start our family. Please call me. I really need to hear your voice." After sending the message, she took a deep breath and stepped under the soothing stream of a hot shower. After getting out of the shower, she anxiously looked at herself in the full-length mirror, anticipating how she would look in the new outfit she had bought. After spending the next half hour carefully applying makeup and styling her hair, she was pleased with the amazing result, especially admiring how beautifully her hair cascaded down her back. Caught up in the moment, she momentarily forgot about the message she had sent to David and concentrated on putting on the new outfit and seeing how attractive she looked. As she admired herself, thoughts of David crept into her mind again, and she imagined wearing the same outfit for him later in the evening. While Richard was working out on the simulator, Ellie took a short black cocktail dress out of her bag. The daring outfit, bought especially for their trip, showcased her beautiful breasts thanks to its plunging neckline. That evening, she decided not to wear a bra, opting for a bold look. The short skirt revealed her long legs, which were accentuated by the new high-heeled shoes she had bought especially for the occasion. She paused for a few moments to admire the stunning dress, then reached for the underwear drawer. With precision, she chose the lingerie she was going to wear for Richard that evening and carefully laid it out on the bed. She delicately unbuttoned her fresh black tights and slipped them down her smooth, long legs. She got into the dress, secured it in place, and then put on the high-heeled shoes without hesitation. Adjusting her dress to make sure her large, round breasts were covered with taste, she went to the full-length mirror to admire the final version of her outfit. She stared in awe at the stunning woman reflected in the mirror. A smile of satisfaction played on her lips as she admired her own attractiveness and imagined her husband's reaction when he saw her later. Glancing at her watch, she realized Richard would be back in the room soon and decided to clean up the room. She carefully packed the seductive lingerie she had chosen for the evening so she could quickly change before their arrival when they returned from dinner. As she tidied up, she noticed the Victoria's Secret box was already open and slightly askew. Upon closer inspection, she saw a piece of paper attached to the underwear. This strange phenomenon caused her perplexity and curiosity. Carefully taking out the delicate items, she found a handwritten note attached to the expensive lingerie. Still confused, she read the note and immediately felt a wave of fear sweep over her, making her freeze in place. The message stopped her heart, and the whole world collapsed in sadness. The seriousness of her actions struck her, and she stared at the message, stunned and motionless. Tears streamed down her face as she fell to her knees, hugging her head in despair. She lay on the carpet, sobbing uncontrollably, experiencing deep and incomprehensible pain and sadness. In a state of utter panic, she dialed David's number and left a trembling voicemail. "David, I got your note, but nothing happened, I swear. I love you, and it was just a stupid mistake. Please forgive me and call me back. I need to talk to you, baby. Trust me." Nothing happened while she was waiting for his reply. She sent many long text messages, and unable to sit still, she began to rock back and forth in the huge armchair next to the bed. When Richard entered the room, he immediately noticed the chaos, like a train wreck that was about to disrupt his plans. "What's wrong, dear?" Ellie snapped back, rejecting the affectionate treatment. "Don't call me that. I'm not your darling. And because of you, I may have just ruined my marriage with the man I love. You got me into this mess, and now he's dumped me." Ellie's words hit Richard like a brick, but he tried not to show it. "Ellie, calm down. What are you talking about?" Ellie pointed to the note on the bed, and when Richard read it, a smile appeared on his face. He felt a surge of satisfaction when he realized that he had once again successfully deceived her husband, ruined her marriage, and forced Ellie to become part of his scheme. It all started in childhood when his father abandoned his mother for another woman. This experience affected him greatly, distorting his consciousness in the most destructive way. It didn't matter to him if he slept with her. He thought he had already gotten what he wanted, and the fact that he would take her now would only be an added bonus. He would let her cry herself out, and then convince her that since her husband suspected her of intimacy with him, they could bring it to life and have fun. Although he knew it wouldn't be easy, he had a talent for this kind of thing. His previous encounters with unfaithful wives had given him confidence. But Ellie didn't want to play along with him anymore. She defiantly kicked off her heels and took off her dress right in front of Richard, ignoring his presence. He felt that she was going to make her move and get what she wanted, standing completely without anything in front of him. His body tensed in anticipation when he saw her stunning figure. Getting to his feet, he was hoping that Ellie would come to him on her own. But instead of obeying, Ellie burst out laughing. "You must be completely crazy if you think I'm ever going to touch you again. I need to go home and fix what you've done," she said. Richard, realizing that he would not be able to get his way, got angry and said in a tone that shocked Ellie, "It's your fault, stupid woman. You agreed to this." He snapped, "You made the decision to leave your husband and enter into a physical relationship with me. I didn't put pressure on you. It was your choice. Your outfit today seems to hint at an invitation to intimacy. If you really loved your husband, you wouldn't agree to spend the weekend with me. How dare you talk to me like that? You're disrespectful, and I don't want anything to do with you. You have harmed my marriage, and I do not know how to reconcile with David and earn his forgiveness. If he had done that, I would have divorced him and turned his life into a nightmare. I despise you and your actions." Enraged, Richard hissed back, "It's all my fault, isn't it? That kiss you initiated an hour ago speaks for itself. You enjoyed it and wanted more. You wanted me to sleep with you and turn your world around. Admit it and stop falsely accusing me of wanting to cheat on the man you claim to love. I will never believe that you really loved him and voluntarily committed adultery. You are just like everyone else who's looking for excitement on the side, just to avoid getting caught. And when you get caught, you shift the blame to the one who seduced you. Well, princess, if you really loved your husband, you wouldn't let me seduce you, take you on a trip around the country, and agree to a night of passion. You didn't even hesitate to share a room and a bed with me. It is obvious that your love for your husband is questionable. I can't imagine what you would do if you didn't care about him. Believe me, he would be happy to know that you are unfaithful and cannot be relied upon before starting a family." His words broke her spirit. She admitted that he was right and that she had chosen her own path. She blamed him for everything, but at the same time, she knew that she could have refused at any moment. Even her sister had warned her, but she decided to betray her husband with Richard. At that moment, she didn't know what was causing her more pain, realizing that Richard had correctly assessed her actions or feeling a great sense of guilt. She quickly packed her things and hurried into the hall to seek help from the concierge, desperate to meet her husband. She hoped the concierge would help her find a way to return home. She knew that she needed to go back to David, express her love to him, and assure him that nothing terrible had happened. Despite this, after an inconclusive 20-minute phone conversation, she found out that all return flights for that evening were fully booked. Unable to leave San Diego until the next morning, she planned to board a flight home and arrive around 6 o'clock in the evening. Realizing that it was too late to take any other measures, she asked for help. Then it dawned on her that she had nowhere to spend the night. The concierge, noticing her distress, offered to help her find a room. She was informed that the room was available, and if she provided a credit card, she could get the key within a few minutes. As she handed over the credit card, she thought about the moments David had mentioned in his note. It dawned on her that she had been inconsiderate and unfriendly toward her husband, allowing guilt to manifest itself in the form of anger and stress toward him. A feeling of unease came over her when she noticed the concierge's expression. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Wallace, but your card has been canceled. Do you have another form of payment?" Shocked, she replied, "No, this can't be happening. Here, please try to use this card," she said, realizing that David had canceled their joint cards. After the other two failed, she felt a growing panic as she tried to think of the next step. Going back to Richard's room was out of the question, so she resigned herself to staying up all night and waiting for morning. Finding no other way out, she reluctantly overcame her pride and called her sister. "Hello? I'm sorry to bother you. Is everything okay, sis? What happened?" Ellie's voice cracked as she poured out her heart to Jenny, confessing, "I should have listened to you, but I didn't. David found out about my plans and left a note in his bag, in which he wrote that he had abandoned me. Now I am in a difficult situation and am trying to return home. I'm not going to say I told you so. That would be rude. I don't know what to do next. David is not answering my calls and texts, and it looks like he canceled our credit cards. As a result, I can't rent a hotel room. Could you provide your credit card information to cover the cost of the room, and I will refund the money upon return? Ellie, you're supposed to be the smartest person in the family, but lately you haven't been making the best decisions. I'll help you this time." An hour later, Ellie called her sister back. "Jenny, thank you for helping your stupid sister. I managed to find a room for the night, and I will fly home on the morning flight. Do you think he'll forgive me?" Jenny replied, "I'm not sure, sis. Have you heard anything from him?" Ellie sighed. "No, but I left him a few messages and assured him that nothing had happened." Jenny wished her luck but added, "The fact that he knew about your plans and you went on a trip anyway doesn't bode well. If you want him to come back, keep contacting him and asking for forgiveness." The nightmare came true. Ellie didn't know if she had slept with Richard or not, but her intentions were clear, and that was all he needed to know. Despite her declarations of love for him, she had decided to pursue another man, intending to enter into an intimate relationship with him. He couldn't imagine how he could build a future or stay married to her. In response, he turned off his phone, packed his things, and the next day left for Austin, Texas, where numerous job prospects awaited him. He updated his relationship status on Facebook to single and attached a photo of the couple that he created with artificial intelligence, using their photos found on the internet. The signature read, Ellie's new love, Richard Jones. After Ellie left with that man, he filed for divorce and considered their marriage over. When he returned to the site an hour later, he was surprised to see many comments from friends expressing shock at his situation. Some women even expressed their sympathy and support, suggesting that he contact them if he needed someone to talk to. Surprisingly, after several months of feeling unnecessary, he suddenly felt a glimmer of hope and realized that his life was not ruined because of his spouse's infidelity. After a little investigation, he found out that Richard wasn't really going through a divorce and sincerely loved his family. Instead, he took pleasure in manipulating and seducing unsuspecting women, enjoying the power he felt by turning their partners into cuckolds. For this egoist, it was an unhealthy delight. His addiction was to control these women and their husbands. Ellie was shocked to learn that Richard had cheated on her on all levels. She made sure that his wife found out about their affair and about his courtship of other women in the workplace. Richard's life was about to change. Mr. Wills, where is your client? David was scheduled to appear in court on the day of the divorce hearing. The judge got angry when he didn't arrive and asked, "Where is he?" The lawyer stated, "I don't know where David is, but I'm sure he will arrive soon." In response, the judge adjourned for 15 minutes and warned that if David did not appear at the hearing, he would be held in contempt of court. Joshua Wills, David's lawyer, tried to contact him on his cell phone and found out that David would not be able to attend the required court hearing. "I'm stuck in traffic," David said. When the judge returned, Joshua stood up and addressed him. "Your Honor, my client is currently stuck in traffic and is making every effort to arrive as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I have other things to do today." The judge responded, "Your client is in contempt of court, and I am fining him $1,000. After reviewing the case file, I also demand 3 consultations before the next court date, which will take place within 60 days. I ask you to warn your client that failure to attend consultations or failure to appear in court may result in a 30-day prison sentence and an additional fine. Do you recognize and understand my decision today?" "Yes, Your Honor," Joshua replied. He scolded David, urging him to comply with the judge's ruling. Despite initially refusing mandatory consultations, David eventually agreed, hoping that this would speed up the divorce process. The day of the consultations had arrived. She hadn't seen David since she had made the regrettable choice in favor of Richard. When she approached him with open arms, she was met with cold rejection and complete disregard. Having cleaned himself up after crying, the consultant started the session again. Ellie expressed her love for David and apologized for not understanding the consequences of her actions. She confessed that she had not slept with him and left as soon as she realized what was going on. With tears in her eyes, she asked for forgiveness. When it was his turn to speak, David said, "Doctor, I want to clarify that in order for these sessions to benefit, we both need to be completely honest with each other. Is that so?" "Yes, David. You both agreed to be extremely honest during these informal sessions. It is very important that you both speak freely and truthfully," the doctor replied. "Thank you, Doctor," David said. When he turned to Ellie and met her eyes for the first time since her return from the trip, he felt his heart begin to pound. Resentment and suffering flared up in him again. "It's hard for me, Ellie, and I hope you'll be honest. You're saying that nothing happened between you and Richard?" "There was nothing between us," Ellie replied. "I have to understand and forgive your actions, right?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she smiled and assured him, "Yes, David, nothing really happened. When I received your note, I immediately realized my mistake and hurried back home to you." "I see what you're getting at, Ellie. I know you well, and I know you're not the type to cheat," David replied. "You've never been one of those women who cheat or behave inappropriately." "Of course not," Ellie confirmed. "I'm not like that, and you know it," she said, holding out her hand to David. He didn't take it, leaving it hanging in the air until she withdrew it. "I know you're not like that, Ellie. I know that you only share intimacy with those with whom you have a sincere connection," he said. I know you had feelings for Richard, am I right? Faced with the choice of confessing her feelings or being known as a libertine, she reluctantly admitted, well, yes. I didn't love him. I only loved you. Yes, I loved you too, Ellie, David replied. But what worries me is that it all looks like an affair. Have you ever spent time with him outside of work? Did you go to lunch or drink together? Of course, we work together, Ellie said. That explains everything. So, I take that as a yes. Now be honest with me, Ellie. Have you ever held hands with him while walking? Ellie avoided looking into his eyes, whispering yes. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, David said. Were you holding hands? Yes, she admitted, but I didn't love him. I know you didn't love him, David replied. Tell me, have you ever kissed him passionately? Only once, I swear, she confessed. David couldn't understand what had happened, but all his emotions, pain, anger, resentment, and humiliation, poured out in the form of tears. Her confession triggered a flood of emotions that David had been holding back. Tears streamed down his face, which was something Ellie hadn't expected to see from the normally stoic man. When the tears subsided, David pulled himself together and asked the last question without taking his eyes off her. Ellie, if I hadn't sent that note along with the underwear intended for your lover, would everything have been different? Did you think about sleeping with him that night? She hesitated to answer, feeling awkward looking at his tears. After a short pause, the doctor turned to Ellie. Ellie, it's very important to deal with this now. You are in a safe place, and there is no need to hide anything. Please respond to David's request. David, his voice breaking, said, Ellie, I love you, and I will never hurt you. But if you hadn't intervened with that note, I would have made a terrible mistake and slept with him. You saved me, and I will always be grateful to you for that. Honey, we have to stick together, David added, tears in his eyes. Turning to the doctor, David explained, that's why I can't continue this marriage. She had every intention of being unfaithful. The act itself doesn't matter to me. Intentions are crucial. If she was willing to do it once, I'm afraid she'll do it again in the future. And I can't live with that kind of uncertainty in the years to come. I will never forget her desire to be with someone other than me, someone she really wanted. I often wondered if she still had these feelings, or if she had already overstepped herself when she boarded the plane. It became clear that she had made her decision long before. Over the next 3 weeks, David underwent the necessary consultations, and 3 months later, their divorce was formalized. Despite constant calls and requests to cancel the divorce and give her another opportunity, her father, sister, and their mutual friends remained firm in their opinion. They all adamantly told him that he was making a stupid decision, especially since she had not entered into a physical relationship with Richard. David tried to express his emotions, but they all believed that he should forget about her mistake and work to restore their marriage. In their opinion, she still loved him, and he was just showing immaturity by not accepting her back. They urged him to act like a responsible adult and bring her back into his life, delighted that his own ego was interfering with their reconciliation. He bluntly told them never to talk to him again. After that, he started working on contracts all over the country and left the city without looking back. Despite Ellie's insistent pleas for forgiveness, he eventually had to block her number to put an end to the constant calls. He believed that eventually she would leave and find someone else, but hoped that she had learned from their experience and would be faithful in a future relationship. Almost a year had passed since that tragic day, but the memories of his marriage did not leave him. Working all over the country, he severed his connection with home, but that was when he decided to act and take revenge. Before leaving, he set up a remote connection to the home internet, which allowed him to access Ellie's computer. He knew about her habit of logging into the company's VPN upon returning from work to send reports. He was ready to implement his plan. After she finished her work, she nonchalantly closed the laptop, thinking that the system was turned off. Taking advantage of the opportunity provided by the lack of security measures on her device, he gained remote access to her laptop. Although she was connected to the company's internal network via a VPN, she did not provide proper security protocols. It's always nice when support staff prefer convenience over security, although he shouldn't complain about the easy money he earned this way. He realized that he had been distracted after opening her email. He sent Richard a message containing a rootkit hidden in a link that he knew Richard couldn't help but open. The letter was from Ellie. She asked him to follow the link and leave a review about her appearance. Once trapped, Richard clicked on the link, unknowingly activating malware that quickly spread to all the servers he had access to. Meanwhile, he only received an error message, awaiting further instructions. After repeated attempts to follow the link, he finally realized that it wasn't working and decided to ask Ellie about it the next day. As expected, he clicked on the link, giving him access to the company's most confidential information. He quickly eliminated all traces of Ellie's involvement in this email and deleted the remote access logs on her laptop. After the investigation, no letter, link, or evidence of hacking was found. It was hoped that the OT team would ignore this incident and focus on more important matters. After a week of waiting, he finally started acting. Using a VPN and several remote servers in 8 countries, he successfully penetrated the main server of Richard's company. He installed various programs to help him cope with the task, and within a few hours, he had access to important files. He downloaded crucial documents, such as the company's financial statements, employee salary information, engineering data, and patent applications. These patents could bring the company millions of dollars in revenue. He decided to prank Richard by registering him on several adult websites, some of which were on the deep and dark web. Using his work computer, he was able to register him using his credit card and bank details without his knowledge. After installing a program on Richard's computer, he redirected all messages from these sites to a hidden file that only he had access to. It was surprisingly easy for him to manipulate Richard's online presence and use the company's resources without revealing himself. He saved numerous images, compromising videos, corporate schematics, and confidential engineering documents in a secret file. This was the beginning of his plan to sabotage Richard by sending confidential information to his competitors using the company's mailbox. He inquired about the payments that should be transferred to Richard's account. After that, he deleted the sent emails in the usual way. Richard had been hired more for his knowledge of finance than for his technical abilities. As a beginner, he mistakenly believed that deleting emails and files would erase all evidence, but any thorough investigation would have easily revealed the truth. Taking matters into his own hands, he began sending incriminating videos from Richard's computer to sites under FBI surveillance. In just a week, more than 100 images were sent, which undoubtedly attracted the attention of the FBI. He instructed one of his employees to plant a USB drive with numerous compromising images in Richard's apartment. They successfully installed the device within 2 days of receiving the assignment. It was all part of my carefully laid plan. Throughout the operation, I took precautions using a VPN, several remote servers, and my cybersecurity skills to ensure that there would be no traces leading to me. 10 days later, Richard was in a meeting with the president of the company when a group of 6 FBI agents burst into his office, filling the room. They shouted with weapons in their hands, "FBI, nobody move!" The scene was unreal, and all the office staff froze in fear, watching the chaotic scene, unable to speak or move. The agents announced that they had an arrest warrant for Richard Jones and permission to access the company's servers, citing awareness of federal crimes. The president gave Richard a scornful look and then escorted 2 FBI agents to the Information Technology Department. Ignoring the president's protests, the FBI confiscated the company's servers and data, which led to its complete shutdown. As soon as the news of the situation spread, competitors joined the case and began contacting customers, with my help. Richard's actions led to the collapse of the company, as a result of which he was fired and received a lawsuit from the company. Richard's federal case attracted a lot of media attention. The company he worked for was in serious financial difficulties, and it was unclear if it would be able to weather the storm caused by Richard's actions. The scandal tarnished the company's reputation and led to Richard becoming a national outcast. As a result, he was convicted on numerous charges, including possession of prohibited materials, wire fraud, corporate espionage, theft from a federal structure, and extortion. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with a minimum term of 20 years for good behavior. His wife filed for divorce, and the children broke off their relationship with him forever. He lost everything by meeting the wrong person. In addition, Ellie became a victim when news of her affair with Richard leaked and spread across several national news platforms. Somehow, the sites were hacked. The scandal raged for more than a week, causing huge damage to her reputation. On Valentine's Day, a scandal broke out in the newspapers related to his wife's infidelity and her relationship with Richard Jones, nicknamed Hacker in the articles after his arrest. Love Day took a dark turn for Ellie. Her personal information, including her photo, address, place of work, and details of the divorce, was scattered all over the internet. Wherever she went, Ellie was met with harsh remarks and judgmental looks. As a result of the public outcry, she lost her job, becoming famous due to her connections with an infamous man. Happy Valentine's Day, Ellie. The prospects for her future career were bleak, and she found herself surrounded by unfavorable characters. Interestingly, karma was able to balance the situation.